He was riding his motorcycle to work early this morning. At around 2:30 a.m., he crashed his bike. We're thinking he had a heart attack, and that's what caused him to crash. In high school, about 13 years ago, I had to do a paper for English class. The topic was, write a paper on either a personal hero of yours or something that influenced you growing up, and then present it to the class. I wrote my paper on my dad. I wrote about how much I loved him, how much he cared for me, his 15 years in the army, and how he was raising me to be a successful adult. I probably spent more time on that than any other paper I did. I was proud of it, and happy I got to read it aloud. Later that evening, I mentioned the paper to my dad, told him we could do it on either a hero or something that influenced us. He asked what I did mine on. I was embarrassed, so I told him I did it on a band. The last 13 years, I've regretted that. The last 13 years, I've wanted to tell him what I did the paper on. Just 2 days ago, it came across my mind again. Dad, I wrote that paper on you. You're my hero, always were and always will be. I'm sorry I didn't tell you how much I loved you and how much you meant to me. Thank you for always being there. I love you, Dad. Update. No one is probably going to see this, so I'm really just doing this for me. Things have been real hard, as you can imagine. My mum has had it the worst. But at the same time, I know things are getting better. My family isn't sobbing anymore, and my mum isn't hysterical. People still cry, but it isn't as prevalent anymore. We had a little private viewing on Thursday. It was awful, but needed, I think. Yesterday was the visitation. I expected 30-40 people to show up. Turns out roughly 250 people were there. It was insane. My dad apparently touched a lot of lives and meant a lot to a lot of people. He was an engineer on the railroad the last 16 years, and the railroad literally shut down all operations so the workers could come. Today is the funeral. Starts in about 3 hours. Not really sure what to expect. I'll be speaking during the service and actually reading this story since I don't have a copy of this paper anymore. Update 4/14. Again, definitely not expecting a single soul to see this. Maybe I'm just using this as a journal of sorts. I don't know. Anyway, the funeral was exactly like he would have wanted. He was a retired soldier and was proud of his service, so we had a military funeral. It began at the funeral home where somber family and friends filed in. The minister began everything and then called me up to say some things. First being something from my mum, who wanted me to tell everyone what her family in Germany is doing in regards to the death. Then I told my story, the one from above. Then I finished off with the Fiddler's Green poem, which is a poem about where deceased cavalrymen go, which he was. I changed a few words around to make it more appropriate, and left out the final verse. The funeral was about 40 minutes long, and then the 38-car procession left to the nearby army base where we held the military funeral. It was very nice. Minister said some words, tapped 21-gun salute, and the folded flag which my mum received. It's exactly what he would have wanted. A couple days after the funeral, my mum flew to Washington to stay with my brother and his wife. She's flying back tomorrow, and then flying to Germany in a few weeks to see her family. While she's home, I'll be living with her for however long she needs, as well as when she gets back from Germany. My family is doing better, I think. My mom still had episodes, as do I. It's been a little harder this last week. Not exactly sure why. I decided to go to the crash site, where we erected a cross with his name, date of birth and death, and a sign with a poem. He worked at the railroad for 16 years, and his co-workers were very affected as well. Someone stopped at the cross and put my dad's work vest around it. It was touch. I lost it right there on the off-ramp from the interstate. No one has gone to see the tombstone yet. We're waiting for my mum. Since it's on a military base, the tombstones are all uniform, but they let us personalize the words some. My mum let my brother and I picked the personalization. It will say, on 3 different lines, Proud Veteran, Black Horse, Scouts Out. Black Horse being his favorite unit while he was in, and Scouts Out a sort of saying among cavalrymen. Update 7/9. I've gotten a few messages lately asking about how I'm doing and such. It's unbelievable that A, so many people commented on this, and B, I'm still receiving messages like that 4 months later. Well, things have gotten better. One of the comments here said something along the lines of, one day he'll no longer be the first thing you think of in the morning. He'll be the second, then the third, then the fourth. I guess that's where I'm at. I still think about him every day, but it isn't the first thing. I'm not sure what I said and didn't say previously, and I don't want to read up. It would hurt too much, so if I repeat something, I'm sorry. We got the death certificate a while back. Took longer than normal, they said. His death was officially ruled accidental, but it also says his heart was probably a factor, but it couldn't be proven. Apparently, he didn't have but a couple bruises and some other injuries that wouldn't have been fatal. All of his motorcycle gear was on. My mum didn't tell me this initially, but sometime later. He left for work at 2 a.m. on his motorcycle. She said just a couple minutes later, she heard a motorcycle stop in front of their house and their dogs perked up like he came home. She said she didn't hear him open his truck or anything, just that a motorcycle stopped in front and a minute or two later drove off. She thinks, and I do too, that he might not have been feeling well and turned around, that maybe he was coming home to have her take him to the hospital, then decided against it. If that was the case, I've been wondering if maybe he wasn't feeling well the last leg of the trip. He was only 1 or 2 minutes from his work. Just maybe he knew something was really wrong at the end, and he tried making it to his work. He felt dizzy or something and knew he had to get there quickly for help. But then he just blacked out. We'll never know for sure, but I at least believe he came back and thought about going to the hospital. We've finally gotten a couple of the life insurance claims back, so that makes my mum feel more secure financially. She was real scared she wouldn't get anything or not get enough to support her. But my dad really set her up, so she should be fine. One policy her purchased pays off 98% of their mortgage. It's crazy. We're expecting her to get around $600,000, 0 cents. And my dad's railroad pension kicked in last week. That was a real bad day for my mum. Every couple of weeks I'll have a real bad day, so I'll stop at his cross on highway. I feel more attached to that than the military cross on base. Father's Day was terrible. I took my motorcycle there, along with an XNF. Aside from that, I guess I don't have much else to say anymore. My friends still ask about my mom and such, but I'll usually try and change the subject if it gets too deep. Still hurts too much to talk about. Anyway, I guess I'll update again later. Probably not as long as the 3 months it took for this. Thanks for the continuing guys. Update. I am still receiving messages and comments from a lot of Redditors asking how we're doing, or that my story has gotten them thinking about their own loved ones. I did not expect any of this. At the time I wrote this, I was a sobbing mess and just wanted to vent to myself and figured writing my feelings down would help. But here we are 6 months later and there are still a lot of reactions coming my way, so I figured I'd do another update. But first, I want to apologize to everyone that messaged or commented and I never replied to. I responded to as many as I could, but it got to be too much, so I'm sorry. So far, well, update. Since July, my mum managed to complete all of the life insurance paperwork with the help of an attorney. The attorney found an additional policy that we did not know about, a policy worth $500,000, 0 cents. So my mother ended up receiving close to $1 million, 0 cents, from all of the policies, and there was another that required the bank to pay off 97% of their house. My dad wanted her to live her life exactly however she wants. He wanted her to go shopping, take trips to Germany to see her family, and never have to worry about money ever again. None of us had any idea he had so many policies, let alone what was in them. My mum is taken care of for life. The attorney she hired went with her to see a financial advisor at Edward Jones. He came up with safe, slow-growth investments and put some money into CDs that will ensure her money will last for several years to come. My mother even purchased a new house last week. In cash, lol. The house of her dreams. It isn't big, but it has privacy, and it's wooden on the outside, which is something she said she always wanted. As far as my brother and I, I'm doing better. Someone on here told me a while back, right now he's the first thing you think of. Eventually he'll be the second, then the third, fourth, etc. Whoever said that was absolutely correct. I still think about him every day, mostly at night or when I'm working on someone's furnace in the basement, because I'm usually alone with my thoughts. I'm in HVAC. I have several great friends that are always there for me, and a special friend that will sleep over with me on bad nights. I've been in contact with the VA about trying to see a therapist, but the paperwork to see one that isn't VA affiliated is long and arduous. My brother's wife recently found out she's pregnant. It's fantastic news, obviously, but solemn as well because they'll never meet each other. I have a 5-year-old, and it worries me he won't remember his grandfather. My dad absolutely loved my son and spent a lot of time with him. I'm sorry if this is rambling. It's 11 p.m. and I'm on call, so I'm pretty exhausted. I'll for sure update again. It helps typing these things out, and helps much more knowing it's helping others. Thank you all for taking the time to read my story and all of its updates. Update. December 1st, 19. My mum moved out of their house 2 weeks ago and it's up for sale. There's already one interested buyer and an open house tomorrow. I drove by the old house and saw the for sale sign. I got pretty emotional over that. It was strange. So many memories there. Obviously family memories, but all of my high school memories and, well, a lot of memories with my best friends and various girlfriends as well. It's just strange. Her new house is very nice. It's one of those that looks small on the outside, but the inside is real big. The previous owner was a carpenter by trade, so he created a lot of custom woodwork throughout the place. It's very, very nice. Side note, my mum fell on ice a few days ago and cracked her kneecap. She was supposed to go to Germany with my brother and sister-in-law in their weeks, but the doctor had said she might not be able to fly. Not really sure why not, but that's what he said. That's all I can think of right now. I'll update again later. Update January 5th, 19. It's strange to think about my dad being gone, that one day he's here in my apartment and 10 hours later he's gone. Like, I'll never see him again. Talk to him again, hear his voice. He's ashes in an urn underground now. I just want to see him one more time, hear him, tell him I miss him. He's physically gone. Forever. I mean, I saw him. Then 10 hours later he's gone, and no one saw it coming. I keep wondering what his last minutes were like. My mum heard his motorcycle pull up a few minutes after he left for work, and then leave after a minute. Maybe he wasn't feeling well and thought about going to the hospital? I wonder if he wasn't feeling well the whole way to work. When did he realize something was seriously wrong? How fast was he going so he could make it to work to get help? He was only 1 or 2 minutes away. Was he panicking? What was he thinking? I keep imagining that's what happened. That he was getting close to work, and suddenly he started feeling like something wasn't right, so he drove as fast as he could to get help, but didn't make it. Did he know he wouldn't make it? What were his last thoughts? Was he only thinking about getting help, or was he thinking about his family? 2018 was awful. I lost several big parts of my life. My girlfriend moved out the same exact night he passed away. I spent most of 2018 depressed. Literally, the majority of 2018 I was sad more than any other emotion. When I was happy, it didn't seem to last very long. I have an appointment with a therapist next week. I'm nervous. But so many things happened in 2018, and I don't know who else to talk to except that ex that moved out. She's still my best friend, and I tell her everything, but I am still in love with her, so I cannot talk to her about her. I'm just sad and depressed. My 17-year-old sister could be pregnant, and my family doesn't care about this. You see, I'm 19 years old. I'm a college student. I have a 17-year-old little sister. She's the light of my eyes, has been since she was born. I loved being a big brother. I really enjoyed growing up with my little sister and sharing moments of my childhood and adolescence with her. But, as naturally happens, she grew up, and so did I. My sister has a boyfriend. I get along pretty well with him. I never over-intruded on her privacy. I never felt it necessary. I don't care what my sister does with her life in that sense. I will always be there to look out for her and advise her, but come on, she should have her freedom as well. My parents never had the awkward sex talk with us. Nothing about birth control or sexual freedom. With me, particularly, it was not a problem. I am quite emotionally and sexually unsympathetic, to tell the truth. Sex is not something that excites me in a careless way, but with my sister, this worried me, especially because she was having a long relationship with a guy and eventually it could happen, so I always talked to her without any taboos. I know she is not stupid, possibly she knew even more than me, but still she listens to me with patience. She is very open with me, she always tells me everything, so that doesn't worry me. Enough. The problem started one night in February when my mother called me quite furious. Oh, I haven't mentioned it, but I don't live at home with my parents. My stepfather kicked me out when I was 17. But that's not the point. My mother had called me in a rage, yelling at me and telling me that I was a lousy influence on my sister. She was hysterical and I was confused. I didn't understand why she was yelling at me. When she calmed down, she explained to me that she found condoms and a lubricant in my sister's bedroom drawer. I felt strange. I didn't see the problem. It was natural for it to happen, and at least that meant she was taking care of herself. But my mother told me that my sister was still too young for that. My sister is 17. I kind of agreed with that. But in the end, it was something we couldn't avoid, so the best thing we could do was to support her and talk to her. My mother became even more hysterical. She started swearing. She told me that there was no way she was going to condone that kind of behavior. I had a brief discussion with my mother about it. I tried to tell her that it was something that naturally happened. Maybe it had not been the right thing to do, but it was done. The best decision was to support her and provide her with adequate support networks. I suggested to my mother to talk to my sister about whether she wanted to get a contraceptive. This is when my mother exploded. My mother told me that she was not going to give that gift to an idiot 17-year-old boy, obviously referring to my sister's boyfriend. I was furious. I told her that my sister was neither an object or a gift. I would not be doing it for him, I would be doing it for her health and her safety. I also explained that this did not exempt her from having to use condoms. My mother flatly refused, and I refused to argue with her any further. I had a brief chat on the phone with my sister after that. The months went by and the subject was forgotten, which brings us to a few weeks ago. My sister came to visit me at my apartment that I share with my best friend and roomie. She looked sad. I noticed it as soon as she walked in. We spent most of the time spending the evening as normal, junk food, some bad horror movies, but my sister still looked nervous. Until he finally blurted it out, she asked me if condoms were totally effective. I ran a hand over my face. I had taught her about sexuality. She wasn't ignorant on the subject, so I was surprised, but I listened to her. She told me she was just a week late and scared. She swore they had used condoms, but she was still nervous. I didn't know how to react. I think my mother was right. My sister is still too young to have a sex life. She is a teenager. It made my stomach turn to think that her life could be ruined. We did the math, and the time was right for a pregnancy test. We did 2. Both tests were negative. I was quite relieved. I spoke with my sister and her boyfriend. While I am not a 30-year-old adult, they are still 2 years younger than me, and more importantly still underage. I explained to them that they should be careful. At 17, you are not physically or mentally prepared to handle an active sex life. They understood and listened to me, but deep down, I knew that my speech would have possibly zero importance on their hormones. I talked to my sister's boyfriend. I told him that if he loved her, he was going to care about my sister's well-being more than a fleeting pleasure. But I also talked to my sister. A stupid idea crossed my mind. I asked her if she wanted to get a contraceptive. She didn't even think about it. She said yes right away. I won't talk much about the process, but we both looked for a good clinic. I was going to pay the medical expenses, and I was going to give my authorization. It is worth mentioning that my sister is a few months away from turning 18. Everything went perfectly fine. My sister was happy and healthy. There was no setback. Until my mother found out. My mother didn't call this time. She just showed up hysterically at the door of my apartment, tried to slap me, which I dodged. I already imagined what she was coming for. My mother started yelling at me and telling me that I was an irresponsible idiot, and that how could I think of allowing my sister to do such stupid things without her consent. She started to bring up things from the past, like how I always liked to challenge her and my stepfather's authority, but that this time I wasn't going to allow it. We argued. To explain to her that even the doctor had told us it was okay. I recognized my mistake doing it without my mother's consent, but if she didn't care about my sister, I was going to. I told her that I was just taking care of her. She told me that that was not caring. that my sister was not yet old enough to do those things, and I also understand that point. My sister maybe should not have done it, but she did it anyway. So what were we going to do? Take her and her boyfriend away, beat them up, chain their parts together so they wouldn't have sex? No. The best thing to do was to take care of them and prevent them. My mother did not accept it. She threatened to intervene legally. I told her that I had no right to have an opinion if she had allowed my stepfather to mistreat me until I was 17. She told me that she had nothing to do with it, and blah blah blah. We were like that for a long time, until she left. In the evening, my sister called me crying. My mother had argued horribly with her. I couldn't help but feel furious. I couldn't understand why my mother was so upset about an anti-conceptive method. It seems my mother wants my sister and her boyfriend to have a baby at 17, so they will never have sex again. My mum told my whole family, and now they hate me. They think I am the irresponsible sibling and not her, the neglectful mother. I'm from a Latin country. Here this is even a bit more complicated. Also, excuse a bit the translation and punctuation errors. My native language is Spanish. I am furious with my mother, and she with me and my sister. We are having a very tense relationship. Still, I can't help but question myself if I really didn't act alone as an unstable and rancorous young man. Maybe it wasn't the best of decisions to support my sister in that way. So, am I the bad guy? I sexually assaulted my best friend, using a throwaway just because. This is a long confession, so I don't expect many people to read it. This incident happened recently, but I'll explain our relationship because it may be relevant. I, 23 years old, met my girl best friend, 28 years old female, a year ago. She had a boyfriend who she was in a relationship for 4 years from before I met her, so I never had any intentions in the beginning. She was also a lot older than me, so I didn't expect anything to happen. Still, I should be careful being close with her. She was definitely out of my league in the dating sense. She was gorgeous, extremely outgoing, ambitious, and had a great personality. We instantly clicked and became close, despite her having a boyfriend. Her boyfriend didn't see me as a threat, I suppose. I'm tall, but was quite skinny and a lot younger than her. Fast forward a couple months, she was having issues with her boyfriend and we became closer. I started to like her, but I never had any intention of confessing my feelings. She was older and had a boyfriend. Still, we had a relationship where we were flirty sometimes. It was easy to develop feelings. There were several times, even early on, where I would be confused, she would get touchy when she was drunk, or it was just the way she talked to me sometimes. There was a time when we were drunk, we ended up cuddling and sleeping together in a literal sense, on the same bed. She was my best friend, but it felt like more than that. We would hang out and neither of us would want to leave. We would stay up talking till 5 a.m. and lose sleep just to spend more time together. One time we were watching movies in bed, with her friend next to me, so they thought it was okay, and ended up talking late after her friend fell asleep. She started telling me how she didn't feel like her boyfriend was the one, while I was in bed next to her, holding her hand. I ended up confessing, which she was shocked by, but it was probably because she wasn't expecting me to say it. I knew she knew I had feelings at that stage, but we hadn't openly talked about it. She didn't quite say no that night, but we talked for a long time. She messaged me a few days later, telling me she didn't have feelings for me that way, and I was too young. I was pretty sad but understanding. I didn't want to immediately throw her away after getting rejected. This was my best friend. I thought our relationship would become more normal after that, but the exact opposite happened. She started implying she had feelings too. At this stage, our relationship became more like we were dating, except in the physical sense. Everyone at college assumed we were dating. Her boyfriend was very out of the picture most of the time. It was easy to forget they were dating. We would say all the couple things often to each other, I love you, I miss you, etc. When she did hang out with her boyfriend, I would get jealous. You might wonder why I would put myself through this and not move on. It's probably worth mentioning now that this girl helped me a lot. A lot. We're both studying the same hard degree in college. She helped me quit smoking, I started going to the gym, I turned into a straight-A student. I know right now that if I hadn't met her, I would still be cruising through life without any real goals. I felt like she made me a better version of myself. At this stage I was in love with her and couldn't imagine my life without her. I know this is dumb, can't really say otherwise. I would constantly go out of my way to do things for her, and she would do the same for me. In the last couple months, our relationship got more touchy. We would give each other massages. It felt like this was the most touchy we could get, without blatantly breaking boundaries, though I'm sure her boyfriend was not entirely aware of how close we were. To me, it felt like an emotional relationship at times. But she would always downplay our relationship or tell me I'm imagining things, but her actions said differently. I knew I loved her, but I started feeling resentful for our relationship, despite our codependence. When I knew her boyfriend was probably screwing her, I would get jealous and not talk to her, and she would be extra nice, like saying I miss you, until we were on good terms again. A couple weeks ago, I made the worst mistake of my life. It's been tearing me up, so I made this post. We were drinking one night at a bar. I got drunk enough that we got kicked out. We called an Uber back to her place. On the ride back, I started getting touchy. We got to her place and I collapsed on her bed. This is where things start to get hazy. I woke up a little while later and she was awake, lying in front of me. She grabbed my hand and I started massaging her back like we were used to. After a few minutes, I started going lower and lower. I stuck my hand down her panties. I don't want to describe more, but you get the idea. She didn't try to stop me, but she wasn't encouraging me either. Eventually, after a few minutes, I realized what I was doing and stopped. When I woke up, she seemed okay. She was still touchy and asked me for another massage. Pretty sure she hadn't processed it at this stage. Still, she seemed on edge. I knew I had fucked up, but I didn't quite realize the extent of what I did. A few days later, she told me she was sleeping and I sexually assaulted her. I know for a fact that she wasn't sleeping, but I know I really fucked up, if that's even a point of contention. She told her boyfriend and now he's mad too. It feels like my world just fell apart. I know it's my fault. She is the victim, and I wouldn't blame her. I know I'm a terrible person. I just don't know how to tell anyone else in my life for fear of judgment. She told me I disgusted her, and she couldn't even look at me now. It's even worse that I believed I loved her and was capable of hurting her like this. This is not a sympathy post. I just had to get this off my chest. This post definitely blew up more than I expected it to. I'll give some more context. I was a lot more drunk than her. This isn't an excuse, but she had basically sobered up at that point, and I was drunk and wasn't thinking. We also don't drink a lot. I've just chosen to mention the times we have because they're relevant. I don't truly know how she was feeling in the moment. I really didn't think it through. If I could take it back, I would. Maybe she did freeze and didn't say anything. Like I said, she didn't tell me no, but she wasn't encouraging either. In the moment, I thought she wanted it, which might be the most fucked up thing. This is really hard to talk about. I think I knew deep down that she didn't want to physically cheat, but at the same time, I knew there were times it felt like she wanted more, and I did too. I knew there were messed up things about our relationship, but I knew in a general sense that she didn't want to be a cheater. I didn't want to be a homewrecker, it just sort of happened. The point of this post wasn't to debate whether or not it was SA, because I think it was, and she thinks it was, and that's all that should matter. There aren't any details missing, but maybe her side of the story is different. Either way, this is my perspective. Sorry if this triggers any SA victims. We have talked about it, and she's not going to try and ruin my life. I just needed to share. I stole my son's teacher's keys. My son has Asperger's, which is like autism light. We've done extensive therapy and intervention, and for the most part, he is no different than any other kid his age, except he comes across as shy and a bit nerdy, saying that with love. The only issue we had at school was that he would become overwhelmed, panic, and run out of the classroom. Of course, that is not okay. We and school decided to allow him to take quick breaks to decompress when he starts feeling overwhelmed. He has not had an incident since the 3rd grade. He started the 6th grade last year, and it's hard for any kid, especially for an Aspie's kid. We met with all of his teachers and reminded them that he has this accommodation in writing, and he will likely need to use it since middle school is tough for an Aspie kid. All but one of his teachers understood that and were supportive. His math teacher is just a nasty bitch. She's one of those teachers that should not be a teacher. We're not those crazy in-your-face parents. We just want what's best for our son and work with his teachers to do so. We kept on reminding her, verbally and in writing, especially as our son's anxiety started to grow around her. Imagine my surprise when I get a call from his counselor telling me to pick my son up. Apparently, he had bolted from her classroom and ran out to the field. The principal and a counselor tried to escort him to the office and he refused unless they called me. It horrified me because I've seen videos of cops being called and tasering or hitting special needs kids. When I got there, my son was very upset. It was like watching years of progress unravel. Apparently, he started to feel overwhelmed in her class because she's a bitch. She tuned on the heat too high and closed all the doors. He felt trapped and claustrophobic. When he asked for a break, she refused and told him to sit down or get detention. That only fueled his anxiety more, and he exploded. The school quickly accepted that the situation was handled poorly by the teacher. I requested that he switch classes and even threatened to get a lawyer for not following the accommodations that they are required by law to follow. That got their attention quickly. They did not send him back to her class. Rather, he went to another class until the matter was resolved. The teacher did get into trouble and wanted to discuss it with us before pulling him out of her class. We met with her, and she was just a nasty bitch. She accused our son of using his diagnosis as a crutch, and he needed to grow up. I wanted to slap her. She went to take a phone call, and I saw her keys on her desk. I put them in my pocket, and we finished our conversation, and I politely thanked her for her time. Then I threw her keys in a dumpster and got my son pulled out of her class the next day. That made my day long. My brother went from killing animals to being a kindergarten graduate. My brother is 6 years old. I am 28. To make things as simple as possible, my parents suck. Like, they really, really suck. Last January, I had just started my last semester of nursing school. One day I was walking out to my truck to go to class, and DSS is in the driveway. They tell me that my brother is going into foster care tomorrow, and I'm the only option left, so they wanted to ask me before they proceeded. Didn't even know my brother had been taken or anything that had been going on. Again, my parents suck, and I had blocked them and shut off all contact for a while. Apparently, 2 months prior, my brother's mum had another baby that was born in withdrawal from meth, benzos, and Suboxone. My dad also failed for meth and benzos. Unfortunately, the baby died. My brother was also removed that day. He had went to another family member initially, but she could not handle him, and there was no other family members that could pass a drug test, except me. I decided to take him. They warned me. He's violent, his behaviors are horrible, he has killed animals. I took him anyway. I hadn't saw my brother much in the last couple of years, but I decided to give it a shot. It was a nightmare. He was 5 and had been expelled from kindergarten twice. I tried to enroll him in kindergarten at a different school, but he couldn't function a day without hitting, cussing, destroying classrooms, throwing stuff. One day, his kindergarten teacher had to evacuate the classroom because he was destroying it. I had to put him in a school for children who can't function in public school. He went there for 9 months. He hit me, kicked me, spit on me, screamed at me, actively defied me and laughed about it. I had to re-potty train him. He had been having accidents prior to coming to me. I filed an investigation for sexual assault, which I 100% know he was, but no evidence, blah blah. I started him in therapy. He has ODD, ADHD, RAD, and PTSD. I had to leave class every day to pick him up. I was scared I was going to fail, but somehow I didn't. I got a job in the emergency department and had to leave a lot to pick him up. Scared I was going to get fired, but didn't. I tried everything. I cried and prayed more than I ever have. I read 100 different parenting books. I went to therapy for myself because it was so much, and I felt like my 2 children weren't getting any of the attention they deserved. Because what little I had to pour, I poured into him. I started going to therapy with him weekly. One day, I went to the courthouse to relinquish my custodial rights. I just couldn't take it anymore. 2 days later, I took it back and kept telling myself, don't give up, be who you needed. My brother hasn't had any accidents in a year. He hasn't harmed any animals. He had to repeat kindergarten, but he has repeated it in public school, and I haven't had to pick him up in over 6 months. He can now count to 100 when before he couldn't even recognize the numbers between 1 and 10. He can read when before he couldn't even recognize any letters of the alphabet. He says please and thank you and listens when he is told to do something or to stop doing something. He doesn't kick or hit or bite or scream. And just last week he walked across the stage as a kindergarten graduate. A day I often wondered would even be possible. I believe my brother, my son, is going to grow up and do very big things. I'm glad I didn't give up. I'm glad I could be who I needed to be. My ex-wife committed suicide on Monday and I still haven't told my kids, but will on Saturday. My ex and I divorced 6 years ago. It was an ugly divorce. Our sons are now 9 and 13. We live 2 miles apart and we get the kids 1 week on, 1 week off. After the divorce, we had no real meaningful relationship other than talking about the kids, scheduling and stuff. I had no idea or interest in her personal life, and she was the same with me. This last year she started acting strange. She started being more chatty and friendly with me. I wasn't interested in having a social relationship with her. On Monday, I picked the kids up from school for my week with them, and she texted me around 8 p.m. saying how I was the only person who she trusted 100% with the kids, and I was a great dad, and she thanked me for it. Then she told me to tell the boys that she loved them. That was weird because she would call my eldest to say goodnight every night that they were with me, but didn't on that night. I drive by her place on my way to work and noticed her car was still parked on the street, but assumed she was working from home or sick. I had texted her in the morning about picking up my son's school book that he left at her house, and hours had passed with no reply. That was very strange because she would reply within minutes if it had something to do with the kids. I started to grow a bit worried and called her. Again, I know nothing about her social life, so it wasn't like I could call her friends because I don't know any of them and her parents live out of state. I left ABM, telling her that if she didn't call or text me back by 2 p.m., then I was going to her house to make sure she was okay. I left work early and went to her house. There were packages at her door, which was another red flag. She would never leave packages unattended outside. I called, texted, and knocked at the door and there was no response. I let myself in and called out for her. I went into her bedroom and saw this body with a large blood stain on her shirt and something that looked like a phone in her hand. That wasn't a phone, it was a gun, and she had shot herself in the heart. Called the cops and they questioned me for 3 hours and told me they would reach out to her parents as I was no longer next of kin. I had to pick up my kids and kept a stone face as I was still processing the situation. On Wednesday, my eldest started complaining that his mum was not replying to his text messages and demanded that I take him to her house, which is still all taped up. He thinks she's ignoring his texts or that her phone is broken and wants to tell her to fix it. I asked to speak with his principal in private and told him that he would be missing school next week. He asked what in the world could be so important that he should miss a week of school. I told him his mum just committed suicide the other day, and I haven't told him yet. Her mum has been calling me constantly, asking to speak to the boys, but I told her I haven't told them yet because things have been moving too quickly. My eldest is picking up that something has happened, and now the 9-year-old is picking up vibes too. My 13-year-old is demanding that we go to his mum's and even threatened to ditch school if I didn't do it. The 9-year-old wouldn't let me drop him off at school and had a meltdown. I decided to tell them what happened Saturday because I am not prepared to deal with the madness coming my way. My 13-year-old will lose his shit. My mum told me for 20 years my dad was dead. Later I found he was alive, and I have 50+ siblings. Buckle up for this wild ride, my friends. Growing up, I always remember my mum being a single mum. I don't remember the exact moment she told me my dad was dead because I was so young. I have kind of always known. My mum told me that my dad died in a car accident 2 months before I was born. She said he was hit by a drunk semi-driver and was killed instantly on impact. Obviously, no one questions their own mother, especially at a young age. You believe their every word. This is what I always told people growing up. If they asked about my dad, I would say I don't have a dad because he was killed. My mum took this lie so far to the point that even on financial aid papers, she claimed to be a widower. I never caught on to the lies, but when I asked questions, she said things that just made sense to me. Like, "Mum, why don't you have any photos of Dad?" She told me they all burned in a house fire, started by the dryer right after I was born. This made sense. BC, we had moved to a new house when I was very young. I tried to research my dad and his death, but nothing ever came of it. I assumed, BC back in the day, they didn't have computers or internet, that nothing was online. I later found out his name was Donald, according to my birth certificate. I had to force my mum to give to me so I could get my license. A lot of the times I tried to ask more questions when I got older, but my mum became visibly angry when I did this. Eventually I just stopped because I didn't want to get yelled at anymore. I tried asking family members questions and literally no one, even my grandma, knew. My mum and grandma are super close, so this was odd to me. Fast forward to when I was 19, I started to see a therapist after being a victim of attempted kidnapping and diagnosed with PTSD. My therapist told me to take a DNA test. I asked my mum to pay for it because I was a poor college student. She right away got so mad and yelled at me. She claimed that the government was going to clone my DNA and sell it. So I never ended up taking it. Fast forward to when I was 20 years old, around Thanksgiving time. My 3 friends and I had a fun day of baking cookies and talking all day long, until I brought up the stories of my past and my dead father. I had a conspiracy I made up about my life, totally as a joke. I told my therapist, and now my friends. What if my mum had a one-night stand with a rock star and got pregnant with me? She never was able to find him again, so she couldn't tell him. My theory wasn't too off. My family is extremely Catholic, so to stay in the good graces of my grandparents, she made up a lie that she met someone, got married, got pregnant, and then her husband just happened to die right before I was born. But this is what really went down. I took a DNA test and then confronted my mum about it. She finally confessed that she always wanted to have a child, but never wanted to get married. She found a clinic that would do sperm donor babies. She had 2 miscarriages before me, all with different donors. The 3rd time she got pregnant with me. The name Donald came from donor. There was no dad that died in a car accident. All lies. With my results from the DNA test, a girl messaged me claiming to be my half-sister. She was correct and introduced in a group chat to the other siblings. This was 2 years ago, and we only had 30 half-siblings at the time. Now we are up to 50 and expecting more around Christmas time. We are from all over the country. As for my dad being alive, we found this out recently. After years of research and sleuthing, my sisters found our donor through leads from the DNA test. We have reached out to him and he is grateful to know about us. We have limited contact due to his family and horrible wife. His wife wants to keep her good reputation. He never told his family about being a sperm donor in college because of his extremely Catholic family. I wish he would tell them, and we could meet our cousins, aunts and grandparents. But it's unlikely he ever will. If you made it this far, letting me share my story. There's something wrong with my son. I noticed it about a week ago and I'm completely at my wit's end. I've been married to my partner for 7 years now. We met, fell in love and wanted to start a family soon after, but somehow my dream has turned into this nightmare these past few days. Charlie, my son, was born around 6 years ago, and I don't think I've ever felt this much love for anything in my life. The first time I held him was the day I swore I would do everything in the world to make his life the best it could be. And I don't want to brag, but I think my partner and I have done an absolutely fantastic job. We've never argued in front of him, never not shown him love or neglected him or let him see the normal stress of adult life, even if our own went from bad to worse during the pandemic. What I want to say with that is that no matter what happened, Charlie knew that he would always come first for us. No nightmare was small enough to not wake us up. No scrape on his knee is not important enough to not make us check him thoroughly. No fever was low enough to not make us take notice. And we did all of that together. Family dinners, movies, even the playground. Only since about a week ago my child has changed, and I don't know what to do anymore. It started right after I had tucked him in and read him a bedtime story. "What is pain?" he asked me. I remember it so clearly, as the question caught me completely off guard. With no idea where it had come from, I felt a chill as I looked down at his almost angelic face and saw this strange twinkle in his eyes. That was the first time I felt like he had changed somehow. Of course, I didn't say anything, but tried to answer his question as age-appropriately as possible, but my reply left him visibly unsatisfied. He was biting at his lips, something he had always done, but on that day, it too felt different. Less unsure, more aggressive. And all the while, his eyes continued looking up at me as I felt this strange chill in the atmosphere of the room. Of course, I told my wife, but she didn't seem to react at all. Well, I managed to talk myself down back then, and the next morning when we went to the playground as a family, I reasoned that I must have just let my imagination get the better of me. I guess if that was the truth, I wouldn't be writing everything down right now though. It was at the playground when I got this strange feeling again. Charlie was running around like normal. I tried to tell myself at first, but soon these doubts crept up once more. I don't know. I watched him intently, and he kind of seemed off. Like His gait was different. The steps he took looked strange, like he tried to move legs that were far shorter than normal. Then there was the way he sometimes stopped, with this wide and almost manic grin, and looked at each of the children around him in turn. My wife didn't seem to notice, but I could feel it, even if I didn't want to admit it to myself. Somewhere inside, I couldn't shake those suspicions. Charlie had changed. Or was it even my son at that point? A kid a bit younger than him was sitting on the swing, trying to gain some speed, and I could see the instant my son's eyes fell upon it. There was this change in his smile, this cruelty that only for a moment showed on his face. I was up on my feet before he reached the swing set, but my wife grabbed hold of my wrist as if to stop me. I didn't want to doubt her as well. Maybe she was just startled by my sudden movement, I told myself, but her hand held me back anyway. So I watched as Charlie approached the swing and suddenly grabbed it on the way down, making the girl sitting on there lose her balance and crash to the ground with a loud thud. The girl cried out, and I remember my son's grin, hidden from almost everyone as he looked down at her, then let go of the swing. My wife was over there in an instant, while I couldn't move at all. Thankfully, nothing major had happened. The girl had scraped her forehead a bit, and Charlie was adamant that it had been an accident, but I know better. I saw him grab the swing and smile. We went home quickly after, with my wife almost babying our son, asking him if he had hurt himself over and over again. I could see it in his eyes, this strange and not even remotely childlike look he had. He was shaking his head at every question but kept staring at the hand he had used to stop the swing. I don't know. Maybe I'm interpreting too much into such a gesture, but I feel like I could see him wondering what else he could have done, and I get shivers even thinking about that. That night my wife put him to bed while I felt completely restless. I was walking around the kitchen trying to make sense of what I had seen. Something had changed about my son, that much was obvious, only I didn't know how much. At least not until a few nights ago. Back then, as I went upstairs and to our bedroom, long after she had put Charlie to bed, I suddenly stopped. I was maybe 3 steps away from the door to his room, but I thought I could hear him. He wasn't talking out loud or mumbling, but whispering, hissing in there. I felt a chill as I put my ear to the wall to hear him better, but all I could make out were those strange, high-pitched sounds. Of course, I didn't just leave him be, but opened his door, and the moment I did so, the whispers stopped. He was lying in bed, under his covers, pretending to be asleep. I know what my son sounds like when he sleeps, but this was not it. There isn't a single doubt about that in my mind. It felt like he was waiting for me to leave, and being tired, I did so after a few more seconds. The very next day, when my wife took our son to get a haircut, I snuck the old baby monitor into his room and hid it by his bed. I know what that sounds like, but I promise you I am and was not crazy. If I hadn't found anything after that stunt, I was determined to get myself checked up at the hospital. But I did. That evening, I listened in on my wife and son when she put him to bed. It started off normal at first. She began to tell him a story, but after not even 2 minutes, he asked her to stop and simply talk with him. He sounded different, far too mature, and my wife's voice almost broke. They chatted about their day as if they were old friends instead of mother and son, but I could hear it every time my wife spoke. She sounded strained and on edge. It was only then that I realized that she knew as well. This strange, cold chill seemed to blow through the house as I continued to listen. They didn't talk about anything out of the norm, but the flow of their conversation just felt completely off. It was almost like Charlie was trying to learn how he should behave around normal humans. He asked her what the hairdresser's intention had been, with a few of his questions. What the other people would have thought of his behavior, stuff like that. Part of me wanted to run up there and confront him directly, but hearing my wife answering in this strangely demure tone made me stop and wait. She sounded scared almost, so maybe it had gone on for longer than I thought. Soon after, my son told her to let him sleep, and I heard my wife walking out of the room and toward our bedroom a few seconds later. No goodnight kiss, no I love you. If I ever had any doubts, that alone would have told me all I needed to know. The problem was, I couldn't concentrate on that at all. As soon as my wife had left, the mumbling started. At first, it was almost incoherent, but after a few seconds, I could make out some fragments. It sounded like a prayer. This reverie in his voice made sweat break out all over my body. He wasn't speaking in English, no, nor any other language I know of, The words sounded older, rougher. What I can say for sure is that it wasn't gibberish. His mumbling prayer had a meaning. I could feel it. It flowed out of him in a continuous stream for a minute until suddenly he stopped. I was standing by the counter of the kitchen, staring down at the old baby monitor, then heard his voice, now sounding far too deep for a 6-year-old child. "Stop listening," he growled, then took a breath. "I do not like being spied on." The device in my hand started to blink wildly before smoke came out of its top, and it burst into flames. I wanted to run away, but I knew I couldn't. My wife was still upstairs, but that time, as I snuck up there and past my son's bedroom, I could hear him chuckling. Of course, I didn't dare open the door, but ran past toward the room where my wife would be. My plan was to get her out of there, if it came to it, with force. But the moment I saw her and she saw me, all that bravado left me. She was sitting on the bed, crying silently as I walked in. There was fear in her eyes. Real, unadulterated terror and panic. I knew it at that moment. This thing had done something to her. So I sat down next to her and hugged her without saying a word for a long, long time. We fell asleep like that, I think, because when I woke up, it was from something long and sharp cutting into my cheek. Next to my side of the bed, I saw Charlie standing and holding a kitchen knife while staring down at me like one would do at an insect. I wanted to scream for help, but he put one of his fingers over my lips, and I swear my body seemed to freeze. Moving a muscle was out of the question, and the knife wandered down toward my throat. "What is fear?" Charlie whispered in this gruff voice, but kept his finger on my lips. I looked over at my wife, whose eyes were wide as she stared back, unmoving just like me. Trembling and sweating, I could do nothing but lie there and wait for what would happen next. This thing delighted in my terror, and I was sure it would cut me or stab me, but instead, it suddenly pulled the knife away and dropped it to the floor before turning and walking out of our bedroom as if nothing had happened at all. I tried talking to my wife, but she shook her head and held her hands over her ears the second I mentioned our son. Is he possessed? Was he always like that but stopped hiding it? Has something else taken his place? I don't know anymore. My wife won't talk to me about it. She smiles while she trembles from head to toe every time Charlie enters the room. This morning, we sat at the table, having breakfast in complete silence while he told us what he dreamed about. I don't know how long we're going to last. We can't run. My wife's eyes tell me as much. I can't call the police. This thing would simply play dumb. What else can I do? Someone died in front of my house. I live in the middle of nowhere. I saw him for when I had woken up in the middle of the night. My dogs were barking at something, but it wasn't normal barking. It was more like the sounds dogs make when they're scared, whimpering and yelping. When I got up, I could hear the dogs backing away from something. I could hear their paws rustling through the dirt, growing more and more desperate. At that moment, I was worried that some kind of animal had gotten inside the fence. I should have known it wasn't an animal. The only dangerous animals out here in the countryside are foxes. But I didn't care. I went outside with a machete. The first thing I see is a man wearing a cloak, a wide-brimmed hat, a short cape, and carrying a staff. He was dirty with mud stains all over the lower half of his body. I froze, not from fear, but from surprise. I live in the middle of nowhere, out in the countryside, where the road to my house is just a dirt path that goes on for kilometers and leads nowhere. It looked like he wanted to pet my dogs. He had his hand stretched out and was walking strangely, using one hand to grab and drag his leg forward while holding onto his staff. All the while, my dogs barked louder and louder. I approached him, gripping the machete tighter with every step. I raised my hand to touch his shoulder. I felt every movement, my finger getting closer, my muscles tensing, my body leaning in. I touched his shoulder. He began to stand up with the help of his staff, digging it into the ground, using his strength to straighten up. And he began to turn around. The second he turned, the dogs bolted back into my house. He was still looking down, and suddenly he laughed. It was a deep laugh, like Santa Claus if he'd smoked a pack a day since birth. He stopped laughing slowly, then said, "Forgive me. I saw the dogs from afar and had to see them." He said it in a kind tone. I got a little angry. He was speaking to me like he was strolling through the suburbs and just saw a dog in front of a house. He was in the middle of nowhere, and besides, there's only one way to get here. You have to go off the road completely. So I asked him directly, Okay, but why are you in this area? I sounded a bit annoyed. The man sighed and spoke seriously. I'm on a journey to a place, and I stopped here to see one of God's creatures. Again, I apologize. It wasn't my intention to wake you or scare your dogs. I stared at him, confused, and he said, I'll go now. I can't stop for long. I have a long road ahead. He chuckled softly. He was an old man, and morally I couldn't just let him walk alone in the night, especially out in the countryside where he clearly must have gotten lost if he ended up near my house. I'm not going to let you go alone. Let me grab my things and I'll take you where you want to go in my car. The man, still not revealing his face, looking down and completely still, said, Akipyo. I didn't understand, but he stayed still, so I went inside to grab my things. When I came in, I saw the paw prints had stained the wooden floor and I could hear the dogs whimpering, howling from my room. I turned on the lights to find and grab my car keys and jacket. I went to my room and saw the dogs hiding under my bed. It felt exaggerated, like when Scooby-Doo sees a monster. The point is, I had never seen them like that. I kept ignoring the signs and grabbed my jacket from the wardrobe, picked up the keys from my nightstand and went back outside, closing the door behind me. It was starting to get light, like a breath of relief from the tension and unease of the night. The man was still there, waiting for me where I had left him. In the daylight, I could see him more clearly. His hands gripping the staff were grey, wrinkled, looking like the skin could fall off any moment. He was still looking down, but I could make out more of his face. From afar, I saw his mouth hanging open, drooling. I figured because of his age, it might be normal. Maybe he didn't have the strength to keep his mouth closed. I started walking toward him. With every step, he seemed to lose the strength to hold himself up. His body looked like it was falling apart. I began to hurry, feeling the sunlight blinding me. When I finally got close, I was standing in front of him and he had collapsed. When I tried to lift him, he wouldn't let me until I grabbed him by the arms and his hood fell back. It was a rotting corpse, like he had died years ago. I dropped him. Thump, his clothes shifted, revealing more of his body. I could see his chest. There was a huge hole exposing his ribs, and on each rib was written, Que pateris ignotus ita fecit, he who travels through unknown lands. The phrase comes from the old pilgrims, who journeyed through foreign lands out of devotion to God. The only thing I can imagine is that his pilgrimage wasn't finished, and if something above is watching, it decided not to let him die until his journey was complete. But why did his journey end at the door of my house? What does this land, what do I, have to do with God?